This Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm having hard conversations with remarkable humans. In this episode, I spotlight my guest, Dr. Rita Renee's journey from trauma and abuse to reclaiming her voice. In the end, she will share simple first steps for high achieving women to go off mute and thrive. Sensitive content warning. This episode discusses childhood sexual abuse, trauma, and its psychological impact. Please listen with care. Welcome to Success Reimagined. I am Dr. Amna Shabir, your host on this journey to thrive at the intersection of ambition and wellness. In every episode, I'll help you challenge outdated definitions of success, discover practical tools and strategies for growth without compromising your well-being. I am so glad you've joined me. Let's reimagine what's possible together. Welcome back to another episode of the Success Reimagined with Amna Shabir MD podcast. I am so excited to introduce our guest today. Dr. Rita Renee is a TEDx speaker, author, international keynote speaker, healthcare leader, and executive coach who helps women come off mute, step into authority, and lead with clarity and conviction. With over 30 years of experience in healthcare leadership, organizational development, she bridges faith, leadership, and lived experience to support high achieving women navigating transitions, reclaiming their voice, and leading without shrinking or performing. Dr. Rita is the founder of Ultimate Powerhouse Coach and the creator of the Unmute Framework, empowering women to move from silence to strategic impact in life, leadership, and purpose. I had the honor to witness her first TEDx talk as a co speaker in the audience, and it was very, very deeply moving. And I'm so honored to have this conversation today. It was a long time due. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Rita.
Thank you so much for having me, and you did an excellent job as well.
So, we're gonna get really deeply personal today, and I just want to let the audience members know that we will touch on some heavy mental health related topics. So, if there are parts of the conversation you want to step away from, you want to forward, just do what you require to help yourself. And the number for the mental health and suicide crisis line is 988. Just want to give everybody a warning, but this is the conversation that also, I mean, we can't dance around this topic anymore. We want to get deep, and your story is so inspiring that I will just start by asking you, the work that you've done is so deeply personal. Can you take us back? Who was the woman before the ultimate powerhouse coach, and what was she carrying?
Yeah. Well, before Ultimate Powerhouse Coach, I was a woman carrying a lot of like quiet pain. I was accomplished on paper, but internally I was still working through like the weight of my childhood trauma, being molested from the age of 5 to 10, abuse, rejection, and the silence that those experience can create. And I knew how to function around people. So I had it down pat. I knew how to serve and I knew how to show up even for other people, but there was a difference between like functioning and being free. So for years, I carried the kind of silence that does not always look like silence on the outside, but sometimes that silence looked like overworking, overachieving, shrinking, like in certain rooms, and then second guessing my voice. And just feeling like my story was too messy to be useful. And then the responsibility still of having that leadership role, education, success, but part of me was still like muted. And so what changed for me, it was like realizing that healing was not just about surviving what I had went through in my life, even through a bad marriage where I had bleach put in my contact solution. It was about refusing to let those experiences keep defining how I showed up in the world. So Ultimate Powerhouse Coach was born out of that journey, and it came from a woman who decided that what tried to silence her would no longer have that final word. And now I help other women do the same, come off mute, own their voice, and stop apologizing, just taking up space, but being that space that's intended to occupy.
Wow, so many thoughts are running through my mind right now, but just wanted to slow down time and first of all, appreciate and thank you for your courage in sharing your journey, just zooming back to the moment. A lot of times you mentioned that my story was too messy to share. We think silence, is passive. We think that silence is passive, like nothing is happening. But I've heard you argue that it's actually doing something to us. What is, in your opinion, being on mute costing women, even with such complex personal stories? When you're staying quiet, you use the word silent pain.
Yeah, being on mute costs far more than what most women realize, and men too. It causes our identity because when you stay too silent for too long, you can begin to lose your touch with who you really are. And apart from what's happened to you, what others expect from you, and what you had to do just to survive. So it's also costly with opportunities because there are rooms where women they were qualified, but they never fully stepped into that room because they question their worth and they minimize their value or they convince themselves that they should not wait until they they should wait until they're more ready, right? Till their slate is clean, their life is perfect. But silence will have you watching doors open for other people while you stand there carrying the key to your own next level. And you know, then there's the cost of self-worth. Think about my self-worth growing up as a child. I didn't think I was worthy of anything. I thought this was supposed to happen to me, that I didn't deserve the life that I saw other children. And when a woman repeatedly edits herself and tones herself down or talk herself out of speaking or out of leading or creating or showing up, she starts to internalize that lie that her voice does not matter. And that's dangerous because once you believe your voice does not matter, you start settling in places that were never meant for you to contain. So, no silence. I mean, silence is passive. It's not really. I say it's not really passive. It's more active, more than you think, because it shapes your decision. It affects your visibility. It influences your relationship. It impacts leadership. And many women are paying the price without even realizing it. That bill keeps coming due every single time when they're silent.
Wow. I have, again, so many thoughts, but the biggest thing that comes up for me is more of like a personal reflection as you're talking, especially that parallel that you gave. Like you are watching the doors open and you've got the key, and yet you're like, you're on the outside and you're not really going in. It's not like you are not fully embodying your experience. And I was thinking of this when I was preparing for the podcast of my own journey of when I was completely on mute. So growing up, I was active in theater, drama club, public speaking. I was used to do a lot of parliamentary style, declamation style debates, and then I enter medical school and I just go quiet as if like I just took on that persona, that very rigid, polished persona. Like if I didn't know exactly everything that would come out of my mouth, I'm not just speaking, and I actually became completely quiet. Fast forward, I go through postpartum depression, mental health issues, burnout, moral injury, all the things that happen in healthcare, and I was absolutely quiet. And I now call this phase of my life my unsilencing. And so that's kind of what I'm feeling. And you also said that women edit themselves constantly. I mean, that is such a powerful thought.
Yes. And we shouldn't do that. We have so much to give and we're designed just the way we need to be designed.
We're designed just the way we're meant to be designed. When you were at that, point, I guess I want you to take us back to that moment. Sometimes there is a moment that, you can remember, like, yes, this was the day, the sky was this color, the grass looked like this to me, and I decided that no more. I'm going to actually talk. I'm actually going to use my voice. Was there like a moment or was it more quiet, consistent for you?
It was a moment where, to me, it all came together when I was at the age of 10. And I just something inside of me internally, because again, remember I said I was molested from the age of 5 to 10 by my uncle. And I just said, "No more. Stop. You are not gonna do this to me anymore." And that was that moment for me. I stopped asking for permission and I gave my permission to say no. And no is a powerful word. I mean, it's easy for us to say yes, but the hardest thing is to say no when you want to be liked, you want to be included, you want to be a part of, You want to feel important. You want to feel loved. You want to feel appreciated. And so having that voice and having that strength to say no was the most pivotal moment in my life.
Holding space for what you just shared with us and for our audience members who have had similar experiences or know of similar experiences and that have impacted them. Just like I'm trying to come up with the right words to say, but I guess what I want you all to know that you are beautiful and loved and held in this space. And I appreciate you, Dr. Rita, saying sharing that moment, like, no, no, no more. And actually, like that being a turning point. So you're 10, you say no, fast forward. Then as life progresses, you decide to leverage your voice and use it for advocacy. Am I getting that right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The big point, when I started saying no, I started feeling a freedom, a weight off of me. And then I began to think about all the people that I have been around that may have the same experiences, but have not said anything, and how I could help them by being courageous enough to share my story to help them. I wanted not to just be liberated myself, but I want to help liberate other people as well.
Wow. And we talk about trauma and really like this is big T trauma, having gone through something as heavy as that. And then we look at this other word that's present there. And when I look at your journey and your story, the word that comes to my mind is post-traumatic growth. And so the research on post-traumatic growth suggests that these really hard moments can become one of the greatest catalysts for ourselves. And when I hear you say all of this, that's what comes up for me.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't like everything didn't happen like all neat and glamorous. It didn't.
Mm.
It was true for me. It was messy for me, and the growth didn't come because pain was beautiful. We sometimes say, you know what, it's good to go through it. That's the beauty of it. It wasn't beautiful for me. Growth came because I had to make a decision not to waste it. I had to make a decision, even though these things were happening to me, how can I change it to a positive so it can benefit me? And there was an internal turning point where I had to stop asking, why did this happen to me? And begin asking, what will I do with what I have lived through? Like that did not erase the pain, but it did make the journey easier. But it shifted me from being defined by my experience, but by being defined by how I went through them. And I think a lot of women being healing, going through their healing, it means to pretend that the hard parts never hurt. No, that was not my story. My story was learning to face what happened, acknowledge what it did to me, and then refuse to let it keep me spiritually, emotionally, and professionally bound. And I went back and I observed and reevaluated what had happened to me. And I went back, and because I knew freedom required honesty, that's the only way I could be free. I had to acknowledge the experience that happened to me. And I knew that I could not help other women break silence if I was still protecting my own. So what became the truth for me is this, that in various places that once held my pain eventually became the places from where I found purpose. And that is not because trauma is good, it's because my faith, it came from being who I was and who I was created to be, and the strength and the impact out of what was meant to break me also built me up.
Soaking every word of that in. Absolutely. And I want you to take all that energy and now visualize the person that you help and visualize somebody who is walking that same painful path. They want to come off mute. They want to share their story. They want to own their story. They want to step into visibility. Visibility can be so uncomfortable, whether, you've faced something so serious as or even just in general, like, I think the word visibility definitely makes me uncomfortable. When my TEDx talk was, just recently gained a lot of attention, I started to get really uncomfortable. Well, the first time I made a public account, my Instagram account, I had this instant moment like, what have I done? And so, for people that are in that space of like, where do I even begin? What advice would you give them? Take us through your framework, tips, thoughts. Like you have so much, not only lived experience, but also so many of the other women that you've helped?
It starts, smaller than people think, right? A lot of women assume that coming off mute means you have to grab a microphone, write a book, and step on a big stage, and sometimes it does, but often it begins with just telling the truth in one area where you have been hiding, and that is why I teach the, like, unmute framework. It is not about, public speaking, it's about personal permission, internal clarity, and intentional action. So first, a woman has to understand her silence. She has to identify where it came from. Was it trauma, rejection, fear of being judged, perfectionism, cultural conditioning? And you cannot confront what you refuse to name. And then the second thing is she has to name the idea, the message, or truth she has been carrying. What is the thing that she keeps circling back to? What is the story, the calling, the lesson, or the leadership assignment that will not let her alone? And then clarity, because clarity matters. So you have to be clear about that. And then lastly, I would say she has to move past the fear in practical steps, not giant leaps, just practical steps. Maybe that means speaking up in a meeting, posting her message online, pitch herself for a podcast, starting an outline of a book, or finally just saying yes to an opportunity that she has been, talking herself out of. Then she must use her voice consistently, not just once, because confidence is not built in theory, it's built in repetition. And finally, she has to transform the room, like meaning like stop seeing herself as a voice of promotion and start seeing it as a service. And that's what I start seeing. I'm servicing other women. And when you know your voice can help someone else heal, grow, lead, or move, you can stop treating it like a luxury and start treating it like a responsibility. So, where does she begin? She begins with honesty, clarity, and then one brave step.
I was taking notes. I'm like, I'm gonna read 2 of the biggest sound bites from there that really stuck with me. You can't confront what you can't name. Wow. And, like, confidence is built in repetition. I took a second to read my own handwriting because I was writing so fast, but that is such powerful advice. And when you give this advice, I know that there's always gonna be resistance, right? So, we are programmed to follow the motivational triad, which is seek comfort, avoid pain, and use the least amount of energy. So, when you're sharing this framework, what are some of the maybe biggest, like, resistance points that come up with people? "Yeah, Dr. Rita, like, you're confident, you could do it. I don't think I can do it."
And I always say, you know what? I'm you. Like, I'm just like you. I'm no different, no better. My voice is no more powerful than your voice. And your voice can reach people that my voices can't. And that's why it's so important for us to share our stories and our journeys because everyone doesn't respond to everyone's message. And it takes all of us. So there's no one big star in the sky in the galaxy, right? There's many stars that bring light, that shine. And so we are just a portion of that. And so you have the responsibility to shine and share your voice and share your story when you're ready. And I don't push people beyond their I do challenge them. I do challenge them, but I don't push them if they're not ready. So we have to, we deal with the pain, we deal with the hurt, but I let them know that your story is important and it's impactful and you need to share it.
That stars in the sky analogy, the stars in the sky analogy reminded me of what you embody, another important factor, not just, like, the confidence, but also, like, collaboration. I have found over the past months you to be one of the most collaborative individuals, always truly showing up in service of others, and I very much appreciate that.
I think that's very important.
Yeah. As you've been kind of like helping women with visibility and talking and using and leveraging the power of their voice, what are some of the things that you feel women, in this journey might be doing wrong? Like things you just actively like, please just don't do this. And if someone's listening today, like this is gonna set you up wrong when you are. I mean, I talked about collaboration a little bit. I feel like collaboration, visibility, service, a lot of these things go hand in hand. So I am very curious to hear your thoughts on that.
One of the most important things I feel like that people do wrong is they go into a room and they expect to have the mic, or they expect the attention, or they expect the level of invitations that other people who have already done the groundwork. And what I mean is that before I even came on a platform, or received any invitations, I was out there creating platforms for other women. I came to this area from Colorado Springs after my husband retired from the military. I didn't know anyone. And so what I did was I started Lunch and Learns for like almost 2 years. And I looked around the area and I found women who may have had a voice, or was selling a service or a product, and I invited them to be on my platform for free, to do the Lunch and Learn, to be the keynote speaker and give them an opportunity. Because I wasn't looking for an opportunity just so I can grab a mic. I wanted an opportunity to build relationships, and not just any type of relationship. I wanted my relationships to be authentic and genuine. And so I would suggest to any one woman, when you're going out there and you want to share your story, you want to have a voice, build relationships, because people want to know that you care before they care about what you know.
Everyone needs to rewind and re-listen to what you just said. The quote that came to my mind as you were talking about this, I think it's in the children's book LeBron James wrote, but I say this to my children quite often, which is like, nothing is given, everything is earned. And I think that is such an important point as we talk about this almost chronic low level, what I would say entitlement, dare I say, word that might be circulating, and it's weird that we don't even realize it. We look at people who appear visible, but we don't know the backstory. We don't know the number of no's that they had to endure to get to that yes. I get to hear no so much. And I actually am very grateful for all the no's, because that they teach me how to say no in a graceful, gracious manner, and keep realigning and pivoting and looking for answers. So I really appreciate that advice. As we kind of like look at this, there's this woman who she's listening to you right now intently. What three things would you tell her in her gut that if she wants to share her message, to stop talking herself out of it?
Well, the first thing I would tell her is readiness is not the absence of fear. And it takes me back to when I did my first TEDx, and I was telling you I was so nervous. What in the world? He said, that's because what you have to say is so important. It's going to be transformational. So a lot of women are waiting for a magical moment when they feel fully confident, fully clear, fully prepared. And the moment usually does not come. Most of the time, clarity comes through movement. Courage grows while you're in motion. And then the second thing I would tell her is to stop asking for permission from people who never were assigned to validate your calling. Sometimes the reason why women stay stuck is because they're waiting for the applause before they act. Um, but not everyone will kind of understand what is in you. They don't have anything to do with that, right? Your responsibility is not to make everybody comfortable. Your responsibility is to be faithful with what you have been placed with. And then the third and last thing I would say and tell her is start before you feel impressive. Like, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all together. Just start. And so many people and so many women who are gifted, they delay because they want their first step to look polished. But perfection, like you always talk about, it can delay purpose. So start with what you know, start with what you have, start with where you are. And then women who are becoming is on the other side. They're waiting for you to step out. And so you can keep on posturing, and you keep on postponing that. You're affecting so many women in their purpose as well. And if I could just say it in one line, I would say this probably: your voice does not become powerful when everyone approves it. It becomes powerful when you stop abandoning it.
Yes. You mentioned perfectionism a couple of times. Maybe you know what I talk about, Dr. Rita. So I waited and I held back, but I'm going to ask you this question. I'm curious to learn how perfectionism has potentially shown up in your life, either as a personal experience in enclosed loved ones. And I know that you mentioned perfection for the women, our perfectionistic strivings that hold us back from actually completely stepping into our voice. But tell me about your personal relationship with perfectionism.
Well, it definitely hasn't showed up in my life. And for me, it did not always look like wanting things to be flawless, but sometimes perfectionism can look like pressure, right? It looks like you feeling I had to get it right every time, carry everything well, present strength, even when I was tired. And it can disguise itself as excellence, but underneath it is often fear, like fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. And in the women I serve, especially the high achieving women, perfectionism often becomes a form of self protection. They don't want to be dismissed or misunderstood or criticized. So they often over prepare, over explain, over perform, and still feel like it's not enough. And for me, that was the same thing. And for many people of color, women of color too, that pressure can be even heavier. So there is often an unspoken belief that they cannot simply be good. They must be exceptional just to be seen or be credible. And that creates exhaustion, hesitation, and sometimes silence. So I've seen even myself sit on powerful ideas, books, businesses, ministry, leadership opportunity because I thought I lacked the ability, but because perfectionism convinced me that the timing, the wording, the image, the plan that I had was it just wasn't the right time. And that is one of the I think the cruelest things that perfectionism does. It makes delay feel responsible. So what I've learned personally is that excellence is healthier. It's nothing wrong having a spirit of excellence, right? Because professionalism kind of is like almost like bondage. So excellence says, I will do this well. Perfectionism says, I can't move until I can be, you know, I cannot be criticized. One leads to growth, but the other leads to paralysis.
Bondage and cruelty are two really remarkable words to use in the same sentence as perfectionism. And I must say, so far, any of my guests have not used those words before. So thank you for bringing your perspective into this conversation as I'm having this with more and more individuals, asking them how, they identify with perfectionism and what it has done to their life. And you mentioned earlier about having everything ready when you are, everything needs to be polished from the get-go, right? And I was thinking when I launched my business and stepped into entrepreneurship, pivoting from the clinical world and coming here, I literally felt that the first day I made that public social Instagram account and like filed my LLC, I needed to have all the answers from day one. And at that time, even at that time, like I did not know. I remember talking about perfectionism. Looking back, now I can see, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like when Amna was having all those fears and I was holding back, and I would just I think a lot of, like, also pretending online, to be honest. Now I can look back at those posts and say, "Wow, like, you were so terrified," and I look back with compassion, which is for anybody who's listening, I always encourage everybody to, like, lean into self-compassion. Dr. Rita, anything you wanna add to the conversation today before we head to our final question that you feel would be valuable to anybody listening? And it doesn't have to be directly connected with you've got the microphone.
No, I just want to encourage anyone who's listening that you have a voice. It's time to use it more now than ever. Your communities need it, your organizations need it, and your family needs it as well. We need to be the loudest influence in our arenas and on our stages, in the places that we go, because we have a responsibility to steward our gifts well.
It's responsibility, not luxury. So many pearls of wisdom that you've shared with us today. Thank you for your time. How can my audience learn more about your impactful work, connect with you, watch your TEDx talks? Of course, we'll put all the links in the show notes as well. But tell us where you hang out.
Yeah, I would love to stay connected. You can learn more about my work at www.drrita.com. where I love to share like my speaking and coaching and resources for women who are ready to come off mute and lead with clarity, confidence, and conviction. And you can also connect with me across all social medias at Dr. Rita Renee. I love encouraging women to share their insights as well. Love to hear your feedback as well, whether through speaking, coaching, leadership development. My heart is here to help women own their voice and use it with purpose.
Thank you for your time, and for our audience members listening. If today's conversation sparked something in you, if you felt called to share something, even if it was sending this episode to a loved one who is struggling, who you know has a really powerful story, and you want them to go off mute and share, even just within your circle, or more importantly, take that step even before that, asking for help, seeking support, saying no, seeking mental health care, whatever healing looks like for you, because healing is messy. Please reach out for help. Leave us a comment where you're watching this video on your platform of choice. Find us on social media. Have a conversation, share. I would love to hear from you. Thank you again for listening today. You might believe you don't have the time or energy to focus on yourself, but this is exactly the right time to get serious about your well-being. You don't have to do it all alone. I'm here to help. If you enjoyed this video and are ready to take the next step, head over to dramneshabir.com, where you'll find free resources you can access right away. The website link is below. Let's get started on your path to thriving.